Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Today we are going to have our webinar series 10th session on alcohol and drug abuse is not in elderly is not a myth. And I'm happy that we have with us Dr. Arun Kandaswamy, who is additional professor in Center of Addiction Medicine in NIMHANS, along with Dr. Deepak, who is pursuing his DM in addiction medicine. And we hope that uh, we would have a very wonderful interactive session where we can get many comments and queries from the participants, and we would be able to get some also ideas about how to uh, go for some uh, kind of intervention or studies after this webinar, which can be helpful for all older adults who are having some or the other kind of difficulties with alcohol or other drug abuse. I request all the participants that after a 15-20 minutes of session, which Professor Dr. Arun would have, uh, if they have some queries, they can put in the question and answer session, and if we would like them to say from their side, or else they can put text it, and we would discuss with Dr. Arun. uh, so it should be an interactive session, and we should be able to get a lot of things from the participants also. uh, that would be our aim. So now I request Dr. Arun to uh, please take the charge of our this session and continue.
Thanks, Dr. Preeti. Uh, at the outset, I again thank you and the Vayamana Sanjeevani team for inviting me and Dr. Deepak for this program where we are going to have an interactive session with uh, some of the elder colleagues. Um, Today, I would address on some of the issues in terms of drug abuse, alcohol drug abuse in elderly people. Generally, it is assumed that alcohol, drug abuse, and tobacco abuse are more common in younger people. It is true that it's more common in younger people, but it's not something which is unknown in older people as such. In fact, it is recognized as a public health emergency in many countries because many of the elderly people who have drug and alcohol abuse, their problems are unrecognized. They are unrecognized drug abuse, it goes as. The reason is that many a times people don't know that there is a certain set of symptoms which is because of alcohol or drug abuse, or it is something which is happening because of the old age itself. And these people are already on multiple medications, multiple comorbid medical issues, comorbid meaning like multiple other general medical issues they are already having, and they are on multiple medications. They won't even really know that there is a chance of drug abuse in them, and some of the symptoms and the signs are because of the drug abuse. And few things when we talk about drug abuse in elderly, alcohol, tobacco, and other drug abuse in elderly, there are few things which comes in the front. They are, first thing, the age at onset of these problems. Uh, Not necessarily that all the drug abuse happens in geriatric age group. Majority of the client, almost around two-thirds of the clients, have had their drug abuse early in their age, when they were young adult, adolescent, young adult, and then chronic use, they have moved on to geriatric age group, 50 or 60 and above. And there is a chronic drug use pattern which has been there. Second is people who are been using some of these uh, drugs, they say alcohol usage, tobacco usage, they use recreationally, never have used it in a problematic fashion. What happens is later in the life, there is some issues happen, whether it is something to do with the biology of the body, or to do with some of the environmental factors, psychological factors, social factors. They start using the same stuffs which they were using recreationally in a more regular fashion, and in an addictive fashion per se. There's a third group of people who have never in their life had any kind of alcohol, drug, or substance abuse, later lands up with maybe after 50s and 60s, land up first time with the drug abuse or alcohol or drug abuse. In fact, the later part is relatively less, not much of work is also on that area. Uh, One thing which we really need to understand is that compared to the younger adults, the older adults seem to have significant problems with respect to alcohol or drug abuse. The reason is one, the age, advancing of age causes a lot of changes in their own body's biology. For example, uh, the body's water content goes down, the body's uh, muscle is being lost, but the fat content is more over there. But majority of the drugs also are fat soluble. They go and sit in the fat, and then they get slowly released. Also, it affects the brain also significantly, and that results in a longer term effect of these substances, even if they are using in a very small quantity. For example, alcohol, when it is consumed in a smaller quantity, also can have very detrimental effect in the older age group, which we really need to understand. Also, there are effects which might not have been very severe in a younger age group, might become more severe in older age. For example, the reflexes while driving, if there is both alcohol or some of the sedative drugs have been taken, is very less, and the chance of accidents related to driving is very high. The chance of them falling down, one because of the frailty, and because of uh, other reasons, their chance of fall is more in the older age group. And also their brain is also over a period of time uh, will have been modifying itself. There is a small amount of shrinking will happen. So what will happen is eventually there is when the drug or any alcohol or any other stuff, when it is being used, they have a higher chance of fall because of the drowsiness and the effects which it had. Because of that, they can fall down easily, and that will cause sustaining of injuries, uh, both external injuries and also brain-related injuries in form of bleeding and all things that happen in the brain. The second thing is already the age group itself will cause certain amount of cognitive changes, memory related issues, ability to be grasp things. There are various cognitive issues which used to happen in older age group, can get uh, affected quite a lot at a faster rate, and earlier also if the drug abuse happens. Along with this thing, we also need to understand, since the biology of the body is changing, the ability of the drug which one was consuming early, the ability of the body to digest these drugs come down, and uh, digest and break these drugs comes down significantly, and this causes increased quantity of substance available even if they consume smaller amount, and then the side effect of this happens. These are some of the issues which we really need to keep in mind. I would ask my colleague, Dr. Deepak, to give some more information on this regard. Over to you, Deepak.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that I am audible. So yes, as sir already mentioned that because of the multiple additional risk factors, the elderly population is at a much more risk to develop the dependence to substances, as well as to have more adverse consequences compared to younger population. So as he mentioned that the body fat content and the water to body ratio changes as the person gets elderly. At the same time, the enzymes that break down these substances, when a person takes a substance, the substance acts on the brain, and then these substances are broken down. Even for alcohol or let's say nicotine, these substances are broken down by various enzymes. So what the efficiency or the efficacy of these enzymes decreases as the person gets older. CNS sensitivity, the sensitivity of the brain or sensitivity of the nerve cells to the effects as well as adverse effects to the of these substances changes. That the brain cells are more sensitive to the adverse effects, and that is one of the reasons that we see that even at the smaller doses or even shorter duration of time of substance use, elderly people can develop much more severe dependence as well as much more adverse effects. A lot of studies that though there are regional studies done in India, we have also done a few, one study that looked at what are the substances that are taken by people in India. And we looked at 2-year data from 2017 to the end of 2019. I'll just share those slides with you. Just, okay, the host has disabled it. Ma'am, can I share these slides? I had 2-3 slides that I wanted to share.
Yes, sir. I have made you as the co-host. You can share it now, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, are the slides visible?
Yes, it's visible,
Yes,
Deepak.
sir.
Please go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. It's
Yeah, thank
visible.
you. Yeah, so we looked at the data of elderly people presenting at NIMHANS, and we found that out of the total 6,878 patients, 236 were above the age of 60 years. We also looked at the data of people who were between 20 to 60 years, just for a comparison about the type of substances, the type of comorbidities they have. What we found that during this period of January 2017 to the end of 2018, the mean age of people who came, elderly people, above 60 people who came to us was 65.73. Predominantly, the population or the patients were males, 93.2% out of the total number of the 236. Most of them belong to the lower socioeconomic status. 87% of them were living with the spouses, and most of them were referred from by a psychiatrist who found that this person who has come for a psychiatric comorbidity and then found that he was also using substances and referred to us. Majority of them had not finished their schooling, 65% of them. Most common substance that was used in these patients was alcohol, which was about 82.2%, followed by nicotine in either smoking or chewable tobacco form, about 76.7%. Something that was interesting in this population, and this is also seen in multiple other studies, is the higher rate of use of sleeping pills, that is sedatives and hypnotics. About 9% of the people came to us, that is 21 out of 236, had sedative and hypnotic use in dependence pattern. Yeah. Uh, Now we compared this to, like age of first use in them was a much later compared to the adult population. I'll show that slide also. Age of first use, the mean age was 27.3 years. Age at which they develop dependence to these substances. This data is mainly for alcohol because that was the most uh, abused substance. The age of dependence was 37 years. Age of first treatment sought either at a psychiatrist or elsewhere was 62 years. Age of development of physical complications was 59 years. Age of any psychiatric complication was 57 years, and mean age of withdrawal related complications was 61 years. We looked at the comorbidities. We this is contradictory to what we see otherwise, that they had many of them did not have many psychiatric comorbidities. Majority of them had mood disorder as a psychiatric comorbidity, with depressive disorder being 6% prevalent and bipolar affective disorder being 3.4% prevalence. 62% of them had a family history of one or the other substance use disorder. Now, this is about the consequences that with which these patients had presented to us, that many of them had severe alcohol withdrawal causing delirium tremens, as well as Wernicke's encephalopathy. 4 of them had seizure disorder. Majority of them had physical complications like gastritis, peripheral neuropathy, as well as jaundice. Some of the significant cognitive deficits were found in 37%, and severe cognitive deficits were found in 9%. Total about 20% of the population had cognitive deficits. As it is seen that many of these patients do have multiple medical comorbidities also. About 25% of them had diabetes, and more than 1/3 of them had hypertension as the comorbidity. Now, when we compare this with the adult population, that is with the patients with the age between the age of 20 years and 60 years, we, as in that population also, alcohol is the major substance of abuse, followed by nicotine. As you can see that sedative hypnotics, the percentage prevalence is much higher in the elderly population. The younger population, in contrast, indulges into using cannabis, opioids, and other substances. This is very interesting data that the age of first use in the people who present late is also much later compared to the age of first use in people who present much earlier. Now, if you look at it in a reverse manner, that people who use who have a first use much earlier present end up developing dependence much earlier, end up developing physical complications as well as psychiatric complication and withdrawal related complications much earlier to the when it is compared with the elderly population. Yeah, this is about comorbidities much higher in psychiatric comorbidities much higher in the adult population, and also the alcohol and withdrawal related complications were much higher. Yeah, you can see here that the elderly population had much higher prevalence of the medical comorbidities. Now, the importance of these findings, that this finding gave us a clinical profile as well as comparison between adult and elderly population. There were multiple reasons for late seeking of treatment. As I mentioned earlier, that one of the things that we can take from this is that elderly population, that people who present much later for seeking treatment probably have a much later onset of substance use and probable late dependence to these substances. So we may look at the resilience factors, but at the same time, you also need to look at the factors that are risk factors for developing substance use in the elderly population.
Thanks, Dr. Deepak. In summary, what you can understand is that there's significant amount of consequences which is happening because of the drug use in this population. Alcohol, as usual, is the most common drug of abuse in the age group, and you can see that significant amount of time compared to the younger lot have been using the sedatives and hypnotics, which is the sleeping tablets, which over the counter they tend to get, or prescriptions being used for a longer period of time. These are the two things which comes in the forefront as such. So the other thing which we really need to understand is they have significant medical comorbidities for which also they are on medications. We are not very sure how the drug of abuse and these medicines will interact with each other. It has to be worked out individually with each patient. Unfortunately, some of these medicines may not work well if it is being taken along with alcohol, or some of them can have serious adverse events, serious side effects if they have been taken along with these substances. So this is an overview of the difficulties with substance use per se. I would ask Dr. Preeti whether we can take up questions from the
Yeah.
audience.
Thank you, Dr. Arun and Dr. Deepak, to give us initial brief idea about the substance use. So, what we can see very clearly is that there may be two groups of people. Uh, Most of them who have alcohol and other some kind of drug abuse during their during their adulthood, but maybe later than the usual people, and then who can have developed later, maybe 50s or 60s. But what is very clear is that by going to an old age doesn't mean that if we have any kind of using substance or alcohol, we will stop. There are people who ultimately end up continuing it late and can have more consequences harmful. So instead of thinking that I haven't been able to stop it, so I think I would not be, they should come forward, because now the chance of having complications, including memory related issues, are more often. So it's more harmful and there's more chance of dependence, and it's never too late. They should attempt to come, and we would be able to help them, considering that they have some other comorbidities, any physical other health issues. It becomes much more important. I can see that a lot of people have come to attend our session. That's very good to see. And it would be good if is what we have got, we can ask Dr. Arun and Dr. Deepak about it. Um, so, uh, yeah, so I could see that one of our listeners who also has almost attended all the webinars, they have asked about that whether even the small quantity of alcohol is not good and does it affect the nervous system. Um, Dr. Arun, would you like to give us some insight about it?
Um, the issue is the defining the small quantity. It's very difficult to make a definition that this is a small quantity, you can consume this much. Like uh, this is a time tested question which keeps coming in most of the sessions, whether the habit of taking a small quantity of alcohol, whether it is preventive for any kind of diseases per se. uh, Unfortunately, some of the earlier studies have said that such kind of consuming a small quantity of wine, um, and red wine is helpful, and it's a healthy option as such. Like, but uh, uh, time and again, the studies which had come from India has clearly pointed out that there is no benefit in consuming alcohol for an Indian population. The study which has happened is for a different population with different genetics, where the consumption of red meat is high, and they drink along with their food, and their pattern of drinking is very different. Like, but in Indian setting, our consumption is not red meat. We don't eat that much protein. Our consumption is more of carbohydrates. We really don't need alcohol for any kind of purpose at all. Like, now, uh, this is where the difficulty of how small is considered as acceptable, how much cannot be acceptable. One thing we really need to understand is, as the age advances, even a smaller quantity can produce significant side effects for people, because we are not able to break down the alcohol or digest the alcohol as we were doing it earlier. Even a small quantity can produce significant problem for people. And when a small quantity of alcohol being consumed also, the medicines which we are consuming for other disorders might be affected. Their levels might be affected. Either it goes up or it goes down. Based on that, the side effects can be worsened, or their effects will not happen as expected. So it would be better not to consume. I would put it that way. But if you have specific queries, the person has to be individually evaluated, and then a decision can be taken up.
Thank you, Dr. Arun. If there is a doubt, it's best to consult at least once to the people who are dealing with substance use and we're dealing with the old people, and have a dialogue and then take a call based on their health to decide what should be done. But nonetheless, this query definitely come into the mind of people and their family. There is another question which has come, and I think it would have come in the mind of many people, is which psychosocial intervention is ideal for substance use in the elderly? Please tell us something about it.
See, there are quite a few psychosocial intervention which is available for the younger adults, or the adult group, compared to the older people. With the older people, there are certain treatments have been tested and they were found to be very useful. One of them is screening in all the settings where people go for any form of treatment, screening with one or two questions, mostly the questions where uh, uh, specific to alcohol and tobacco, if it is being regularly asked, that screening can be done. And then a brief interventions. A brief intervention is what was very found to be very useful in this population. What do we mean by brief intervention? Is that we look at the consumption of alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs and give a personalized feedback to the person based on their own condition and their alcohol consumption. What is the connection between both of them, and how that could impact, how the alcohol, tobacco, or the drug use could impact uh, their own physical health, mental health, uh, and looking at the options available. So this screening and brief intervention has been found to be more useful in this population. Motivational interviewing is also another technique which is being used, where people who have committed to a behavioral change can be assessed, and they can be assisted in this behavioral change mode is also being used. But more, it is not specifically tested for older age group. Brief intervention has been found to be very useful in this age group.
Yeah, so the intervention, there is, I think it's also important that the interventions which are required for them, we need to understand that we are talking to a person who is old and would have his own issues and would have tried. So that makes it important that people know how to deal with old people. And as Dr. Arun said, that it's difficult to point out any specific intervention, but there are interventions there. And in some time, Dr. Arun will talk about a couple who had dealt with alcohol abuse, and they have sent their message to us saying that always drugs may not be required and psychological interventions can help us. We also have made all our participants as panelists so that they can raise questions and talk about, because unless and until we help them to address their queries and at least help them to go a step forward, then this webinar would not be useful. One of the another questions which has come is that it's very difficult to convince the old person to go to psychiatrist or a mental health professional for the medications for the drug abuse. So how to make them, how do we as a children of elderly bring them to the medical setup, and what procedure we should do? We are worried about, especially about the smoking. We know that smoking causes so much of issues, and for their grandchildren as well. So I think it's a very important thing that smoking in a long run can cause a lot of issues both in the brain and the heart, and needs to be addressed not in younger adult but the older adults. So Dr. Arun, Dr. Deepak can give us some hint, and so that the person himself would get motivated to come to us.
Thank you, Dr. Vitti. In fact, the brief intervention is something which is very helpful in this kind of situation, where it doesn't need a psychiatrist to actually do this kind of intervention, where whatever kind of problem they are going to a doctor for, right? It could be their diabetes, it could be their hypertension, where the along with what is the medical condition for which they are going, they can be asked about alcohol usage or tobacco usage, and they will be uh, given a personalized feedback. For example, uh, uh, if someone is asked about what is the tobacco usage like, and the person says I'm using 10 cigarettes or 15 cigarettes, uh, uh, if there is a personalized feedback in terms of, say, like, there is a possibility of, for the younger people it might be a different personalized message. For the younger people, if we say that your life will come down by 10 years, they will not be bothered about it. For older people it might be very significant. For the older people, having a stroke might be a significant thing. For the older people, having difficulties with their memory and their ability to execute their day-to-day activities, it might become specific. So the physician will be able to really see what is very specific for that person, and if the general physician gives that comment to them, they will be willing to listen. So this also brings in this concept of that if some person is not wanting to get treated, it doesn't mean that they will be in that same mode all the time, because motivation to quit and change in behavior, uh, it keeps changing over a period of time. It's dynamic. So if they are not willing to change now, it doesn't mean that they will never be willing to change. It applies to all of us. When we want to change certain thing, at some point of time we'll be aggressive and we'll be denying that it is a problem at all. But after a point of time, when we have when we think ourselves, when we have some situations around us, some people who have difficulties around us, then we will think, okay, let me why don't I quit it, why don't I try to help it out. At that time, that's a that's a good time, that's a teaching moment. If that teaching moment can be picked up, and that point of time, if the right advice is being given by the right person, there is always a higher chance of them quitting it. If we keep forcing them when they are not ready, they will not be willing to change, and they are and they being defensive will go up and up. So it would be better not to force them when they are not willing to change, but just look for the options when they go to a doctor, or there are some serious cough related issues which comes up when their asthmatic symptoms increases. Looking for that situation, and then specific to that situation, if the advice is being given, there is high likelihood of that being followed. Dr. Deepak, do you want to give any add-on information?
Yes, sir. As you mentioned, it is very important to use brief intervention, especially at all opportunities that we get. So many a times, as we said, that we get a lot of opportunity to see these patients or take them to a doctor in the context of other comorbidities that they have, including the blood pressure, diabetes. And we know that all these substances worsen these non-communicable diseases. So giving them a feedback, and a lot of patients that even we see have never made this link between substance use, any substance use, nicotine and blood pressure, nicotine and the stroke. So giving them information about these side effects and adverse effects of substances on the body, and also making them aware of the options. So many people have this, they assume that it is very difficult to leave these substances and it will be very painful experiences. This is also because that many of the media show that once the person stops taking a substance, it becomes a very painful experience for them. At the same time, kind of treatment that is available is also not very popular. It's not very publicized that multiple types of medications are available, which will make it easy for them to leave these substances. So giving them multiple options, and as you mentioned that it is not just about the pharmacological. I think somewhere it is also mentioned that along with pharmacological, a lot of psychosocial interventions, managing their own craving, managing the multiple factors. For example, we see a lot of increase in the substance use when the after the retirement. So suddenly there is a lot of free time available for the elderly people, and then they end up using substances in much higher amount compared to when they had a schedule, when they were busy doing something, when they had a something that will take their mind off these substances. So engaging the elderly population in these kind of activities which will keep them busy, which will keep them engaged, and at the same time giving them activities of responsibility. Of course, all people will have different cognitive capacity and social capacity, but giving them some kind of a responsibility, keeping them busy in something else is also very important.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. And similar question also has come again, that how to make them get rid of smoking addiction. So I think uh, what I could understand and I would like to reinforce is that one is that we need to give them a personalized message. We cannot just say that, okay, smoking causes the problems in heart, brain, BP, and all so and so things. So if there is some health problem and if there is a link between that and smoking or the substance use, and making them point it out that time may make that person to understand that yeah, there is a relation and need to do something. At the same time, focusing on what they haven't done till now should not be the focus, but even now stopping can help in reducing damage which has happened, should be the point of discussion. And probably if the family members are concerned about that, they can talk to the physician, and they can say that from their side. Many a times what we have seen is that they would say, "Ki, doctor, please, you say that you should stop smoking." But if we say will not work, only a healthy discussion that you have a right to decide, and you know better about your health, and you are concerned better about your health, physical health particularly, not about other complications, will make them enable them for taking a healthy decision and a positive decision. But nonetheless, so this also, maybe we need to have uh, some workshop or some seminars for the physicians who deal with these people who have these physical comorbidities related to smoking and alcohol, so that they can be the first point of motivation for these people, would also be a very important thing. There are also what Dr. Deepak said, that making them routine and figure it out why there is an increase. There is some mood related issues, some family, some cognition, and work on it is a good idea. And it's always to start as a, like, we want to discuss about it. We don't want you to stop it. We want to discuss about it, should be the first point of talking. There is also a question which has come, that should we make a long-term plan acceptable to the person, especially family emotional situation, who has addiction, is a one question. And the another question, which is related to alcohol, is that in Ayurvedic medications, there is a lot of time alcohol based. So, and many people use Ayurvedic medication. So, what is the say of the addiction medicine specialist about use of these Ayurvedic medications, especially in older population? So, these are the two things which I would like Dr. Arun and Dr. Deepak to talk about.
I will add on to the same question which Aditi has asked. What explanation which you have also summarized. See, even if it is not possible to convince a person at this point of time, there are different ways in doing it. Like, one of the things which you can do is, instead of uh, expecting them to come to the treatment setting, it could be it will maybe may also be possible that you can actually visit a psychiatrist or a physician, explain them what is the current situation and what is happening with this person. uh, that will give an idea that what this person is going through, and what would be the right way of engaging with this person, so that he or she will be agreeing to come to the treatment setting. This we do adopt with some people. When the client is not willing to come, the family members can come to us, and then they can discuss with us what's the problem as such, and then we can advise them how they can take some of our role in terms of convincing these people and getting them to the treatment settings. In a way, it will be helpful for the family members also to reduce their own stress and issues around that, and it also gives them a hope to how to move forward with that. The question on how do we motivate the addicted person using family emotional situations? The issue is that family emotional situations does happen quite often. Social and psychological factors around substance use in elderly people is very high, and the one of the treatment strategy which I've worked up with them is initially to start with supportive work in terms of understanding them better and helping them to cope better by allowing them to ventilate with us, because some of the issues may not have an easy solution in terms of a loss of a spouse or retirement related issues. There may not be easy solutions as such, but if we allow them to undergo a supportive treatment, gradually they themselves will be able to come up with options, better options, and we can also adopt different strategies at that point of time. After understanding this person, after developing a good rapport with this person, we can move forward and give better solutions to them. Initially to start with supportive, and as usual, long-term plans could be made after that. Even before long-term plans, the most important thing to make is developing a good rapport, which is developing a good relationship, therapeutic relationship with the person. Yeah, the next question which was asked.
The other question was about, before going to the other question, I would request people who would like to share their family members or their own difficulties in handling any kind of substance use after 60 years or that time, and which would give encouragement to other people as well. They are most welcome. They may not tell about their name, or the basic is that if one's experience can help many other people, it would be good. And after asking for about a question, I will request Dr. Arun to talk about the message which has been given by one of his patients, talking about his personal experience in alcohol use. So there was a question related to Ayurveda and alcohol. If you would like to give some insight about that, what should be the, in view of your words, that amount of alcohol intake in this population, will it be causing more problem by taking Ayurvedic medications or not, is the query which has come. And after that, if you can give that message from that your one of the elderly gentlemen, it would be, I think, encouraging for all of us.
Frankly speaking, I don't know the answer to the question which was asked, because I don't know what medicines they are and what kind of constituent which is there inside. Like it is very important to ask the prescribing doctor that whether this medicine has any interaction with alcohol or tobacco, and based on the this needs to be discussed upfront, and if we understand it better, then it is good to do. In general, alcohol and any medicine can have problems because of the interactions which they have. Alcohol is also being broken down in the liver, and many of the other medicines also being broken down in the liver, and the capacity of the liver to do this job goes down as age advances. So there is high likelihood of these even these medicines can cause problem. But as I pointed out, it is very difficult for me to say that this is going to be the effect of it, whether you can do it or not. In general, if you ask me, that it is not advisable to have alcohol, and if alcohol is there, we may not be able to expect the same effect, or there could be increased side effects also. But it's better to ask the physician who is prescribing that medicine and discussing this situation. I hope that
Please read that if you would like to about the experience
so
of.
I would like to give a background of this person before reading of this thing. He's a 74-year-old gentleman. He's been in treatment with us for almost around now 20 years, and I've been personally seeing him for almost 9 years. To start with, he came to our center 20 years back. He was treated. He has had alcohol dependence, significant level of alcohol consumption that has been there for some time, from his um, early age, maybe around 30 onwards, and he has a significant uh, 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 he likes alcohol. To be frank, that he likes alcohol, and he feels a companionship with alcohol. His relationship with alcohol is in that way, and at that point of time, he has had significant family related problems. He has had problems with his children and his wife, and then he was brought to the setting. And when he has been brought to the setting, he was prescribed medicines and counseling was done. After, he came only for few times. uh, After that, he was abstinent for from alcohol for almost 10 long years. It has happened almost around 2000 uh, one or two, and then 10 long years he was completely abstinent, and he has never gone to it. Like gradually, in around 2011 or 12, he had started alcohol during weekends, uh, because he usually associate alcohol with his productivity. Uh, Productive means he's retired and he's well settled, but what he says productivity is that he loves music. He always feel that when he consumes alcohol, his music, his ability to enjoy music is better. So for that reason, he has started consuming alcohol in a smaller quantity, uh, once in a week, especially in the weekends. He used to do, and it started like that, and then it gotten worsened, and 3 to 4 days a week, and then daily. And what happened eventually was that he has had alcohol along with his children, uh, but his alcohol quantity had gone higher during that situation, and he had spoken something which is unacceptable in front of them, which made them to move out of uh, the house, and no, they're grown up children, and they are not happy about his alcohol dependence, and there is a complete cut in their interaction, which made him to come back to the treatment setting. And this time I had seen him. uh, he was never in favor of taking medicines, but he was willing to come for treatment and receive the counseling. I have been seeing him for almost around 8 to 9 years now, and there were 3 to 4 times he has lapsed into alcohol, and every time when he lapses, he within few days of drinking, he used to have significant amount of problem in terms of he will not be able to eat, he will become extremely restless, his bp will go high. Otherwise he's a very healthy person, but when alcohol comes in and goes for a week or so, his bp will go high, his pulse rate will be very high, and he will not be able to sleep, he will not be able to eat, and he used to be restless. And this happened thrice or 4 times in the past 9 years. He was able to identify it uh, and early, and his wife was able to help him up in the situation, and he was brought to the treatment setting. Initially, what we used to do is we used to detoxify him from alcohol. We used to give him all the supplementary vitamins and all. And once that being taken, he used to come out of it, and he never had agreed to take any long term medicines, but he was every month diligently he will come and meet me, and he will we will discuss about the effects of alcohol and every aspects of it and how it affects his life, and how is that it has affected his life. And he was very regular. Till date he is regular, and he is able to maintain his maintain his abstinence. So I asked him if he could give a message, and he has given him a message. It goes like this. This is his record. From the past, frequency of alcohol has reduced to significantly, and I'm musically inclined and enjoyed my drinking, listening, and singing after my drink. Um, Though I have given up drinking for 4 years, once again after that, for another couple of years, I always end up in drinking, and that never goes out of my mind. How to control my mind is something which I always think of. I do think of whether to take medicine at all or not, but once I am out, I am better. I'm trying my best to be a social drinker, but it is not happening. Um, his wife, as a countess, rather than a problem, I would say the difficulties I had to go through. Uh, Earlier, I did suffer intense psychological and social trauma due to uh, the drinking problems of my spouse. More than anything else, children were distancing themselves from their father, which was very disturbing for me. Many times I would not call my friends over, but now since it is controlled, I am able to handle it. Uh, yeah, for this she's thanking the counseling and thing, and both she and the husband are regular in the treatment profile as such. This is a information from them. I had cut down some of the aspects of it because I don't want to reveal the identity of them as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arun. I think that message was good that psychosocial intervention works, and even the relapse can happen after a few years of abstinence. And so we should always go and try it. Relapses are not the reason for which we should feel disheartened or lost. I am very happy that so many people have asked so many queries. We would see that we can answer many of them. But one of the things which has come, which we haven't addressed here, is about the sleep related medicines. People have asked about that as well. So the few questions related to that, I would just bring them together is that, just a moment. Yeah, so the question is how to address anxiety in 80 plus if they are due to substance addiction. Over the counter purchase of sleep medications happens by the elderly, so how to avoid this? So I think sleep related medicines are an important concerns because they started reporting that I'm not able to sleep, I'm not able to sleep, and family members also find it difficult. So one of the thing is definitely that we should see that what is the reason why they are using the sleep medicines. There can be an underlying mood disorder or any other issues or stress related that would need an intervention. Definitely there is a need of brief intervention to have a dialogue and discussion, that we understand that you need sleep medications, and then talking about the issues related to that. So please discuss with us, as you have also told, Dr. Deepak has told that there were people who were on sleep medicine. So what kind of interventions specifically work for them, especially because they are over the counter drugs?
Uh, it is a problem. The over the counter medications is easily available to them, and they, if they start taking it, it's very difficult for them to stop by themselves, right? uh, among alcohol, tobacco, things like sleep medicine is something which is very difficult to control because of the over the counter availability as such. Like, it needs, as Dr. Preeti had pointed out, it needs a dialogue. First, we really need to understand what purpose it is serving. all of us have to understand the fact that as we age, the quality of our sleep is likely to come down. And this could be because of various reasons. One, it could be biological. Second is that like how we were not actually uh, having our sleep related practice in a more healthy fashion. Many times we would have learned unhealthy patterns of sleeping, which would influence our sleeping also. So if a person have any sedative drug usage, it's good to bring the person for a consultation. And what needs to be done is, one, we need to realize what is the sleep problem for which they are taking. Is it really a physiological problem, or it is a psychological problem because of which there is a need for sleep medicine? As Dr. Preeti had pointed out, it could be anxiety issues, it could be depression issues, it could be any number of other issues which could delay the sleep. Sometimes what happens is people learn over a period of time that they just because there is no much daytime um, activities available, they tend to be there in the bed and use the bed for multiple other activities. They have the mind would have lost its connection as bed and sleep. That connection would have been lost, and they will not be able to sleep well in the bed because of bed being used for multiple other activities. So we really need to tease out what is this sleep problem, what are the unhealthy patterns which have been developed over a period of time that has influenced the sleep problem, and what is the medicine which is being taken, what dose it is being taken at this point of time. Once we have a better idea of that, we will have to discuss with the person and decide how do we uh, change this behavior and have a better sleep pattern per se. Uh, there are techniques which are called a sleep hygiene. I'm sure it would have been discussed in the Manas Sanjeevani also, in terms of how not to have daytime sleepiness, how daytime sleep in any form, how to keep oneself active in the daytime so that uh, they will uh, um, they will engage themselves both mentally and physically, so that the need for sleep in the daytime will come down and they will be able to sleep in the night. What kind of exercise or pattern of exercise which needs to be there in the morning times or in the evening times? For example, having a walk in the evening would help, but strenuous exercises may not help in the evening. If you hurt yourself much, that may not helpful. Looking at other pain or other symptoms which is not allowing the person to sleep properly, uh, uh, from the sleep postures, everything need to be assessed, and appropriate remedy has to be looked for. Um, Looking at the medicines which they are taking at this point of time, whether any of them is influencing sleeplessness, need to be looked for. And if it is so, then those medicines need to be appropriately changed in discussion with that physician. And as such, keeping the day active and able to follow all the activities would help gradually. But one thing which is very important is they need to understand the fact that the psychological techniques may not produce immediate effect like the tablet. Because the tablet gives an immediate effect, they tend to go for it. But if you have to change the behavior, it takes some time. We would discuss with them and try to reduce it very slowly. Very slowly, the medicines will be reduced, along with all the psychological and social interventions which can to be planned for the person. For example, the dose of the medicine which they are taking might be reduced 10% of it every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. So that slow it will be. So they will also have confidence in the system, and they will be willing to look for treatment. Many times they are afraid to come to the treatment setting, because when they come to this treatment setting and they stop these medicines, they will not be able to sleep. That's the fear which they have. So we'll have to allay that fear, and we'll have to discuss with them find alternatives. If there is an anxiety component is there, there are alternative other medicines which could be given to reduce that anxiety. A good dialogue with them, assess the actual problem, and specific intervention for the person could be done. For this, I would suggest it's better to meet a mental health professional and undergo thorough evaluation. Then it's easy to get it done. The question of 80 plus having anxiety, it really needs to be worked up again. The reason why this anxiety has happened, and how much of it is the coping strategies, how much of it is the situations around the person, how much of it is biologically generated, how much is a contribution from the other medicines which they are taking need to be assessed, and appropriate intervention need to be put in for that.
Thank you, Dr. Arun. I think in paucity of time, we would take couple of questions which are, I think, very important. One of them is for all young people as well, that some people are genetically prone or just they have cultivated a bad habit over a long period of time, and that's why they are not able to uh, stop it. The second is role of yoga and Ayurveda. Before that, as Dr. Arun pointed out, we would have a soon webinar on sleep as well, talking in detail about sleep and sleep-related hygiene and medications. So other queries related to that we can tackle at that point of time. So this genetically proneness and how much we should allow this as a reason for them to continue is an important question which would be in the mind of people who are using substance as well as the family members. So that if you can give a convincingly answer for the people, it would be good.
See, what happens is there are quite a bit of people are genetically prone also. If you could look at the data which Dr. Deepak had presented, almost 60% of them had a family history of alcohol or drug use. And this is not only because they grow in an environment where they have such alcohol and drug abuse is available. It is also genetically seen that people who have a family history of addiction, right, the blood relatives, they have a higher chance of getting addicted to it. And their addiction happens very early. It happens under 25, right, under 20 and under 25 life. The second set of people is those who have lesser genetic risk, but what happens is over a period of time, due to various psychological and social stressor, they look for coping strategies. And these alcohol, tobacco, or the drugs become one of the coping strategy for them, so that they keep self-medicating themselves. And those are the other type of people, who the later onset people, they need not have genetic risk, but they are still vulnerable because of the stresses around them, the psychological and social stresses, which makes them vulnerable. So net, there are vulnerabilities. One group is biologically vulnerable, the other group is vulnerable from the environmental side, the psychosocial side, they are vulnerable. Not only treating the whole alcohol or drug abuse, but also looking at the vulnerability, especially in the old age, looking at the vulnerable the reasons because of which they are risky to drug use. For example, having a mental health issues, depression, anxiety is also important, and they have to be identified and treated if we really need to have a long-term change in their behavior. So vulnerabilities are there. Genetic vulnerability happens early, but psychological and environmental vulnerabilities happen little later.
Yeah, so and with vulnerabilities also we need to work harder, but things can be made better as we put efforts from all the three aspects: professionals, the person himself, and the family members. um, in the webinar on yoga we have spoken about something related to de-addiction, and so we will not cover it here a lot. We will see that we can have related to Ayurveda and addiction as a webinar series. We'll keep that in thing. I think it's already time has crossed an hour, and I am very happy that so many people came forward and spoke about. I think there are a lot of queries which we haven't answered. We will see that we can take this related webinar again or not. I also request Dr. P.T. Shivkumar, who is the professor in our geriatric clinic services, if he would like to give us some further inputs about substance use in elderly.
Yeah, thanks, Preeti. I think one important issue which we need to kind of sensitize older adults is elderly people is that they should know as to why they are taking any medicine, and it is their right also to ask the prescribing person as to why this particular medicine is there, because many times people are taking medications for anxiety or those are sleeping pills for many years without even clearly being aware of why they should take, or is it something really essential. So once they've taken it for a long time, they're very apprehensive to make any changes. So I think that is something which both the elderly as well as family member should know why a medicine is being given and how long that should continue. So if that, it doesn't mean that if it is given, it should be continued indefinitely. And that review, if required, they can take a second opinion also when they are not convinced about the explanation. So that at the first place, we can avoid unnecessary medications.
Yeah,
If there are a lot of medication prescribed, I think they should exercise a second opinion and then see which is essential to continue. So the other point I had mentioned about, I recently had an experience where somebody who was who was having smoking, who was having nicotine dependence, and the family member had advised multiple times, but the person was not willing to actually abstain, and their family had made some arrangements. He was a very high functioning individual, and it was his choice to continue to smoke. I just want to share an experience where the person developed dementia or cognitive impairment. He lost his ability to kind of do his activities independently, but he still had some understanding as to what he is doing. It is not that completely his, all skills are gone. So then the family members actually tried to be very coercive and restricted his smoking. So based on the doctor advice, but that led to a lot of severe behavioral problems, which was very, very distressing for the whole family. So they were doing it in good intention, but that more than dementia per se, this stopping it involuntarily led to a lot of severe behavioral problems. So that is something, I think, whether a person is having a serious medical problem or somebody is having dementia also, I think we need to respect individuals' rights, and simply a coercive treatment is a violation of rights, but they should kind of take care of not violating others' rights. For example, in the family, they are smoking, it can affect other children or other family members. I think they have a right to kind of say that, okay, you do it. If you have, it's your choice, you can do it without affecting us. But at the same time, one should not go to the other extreme where they coerce and then that lead to problem. So this is something like, I think, an advice as to how to approach. I think that a lot of it has been discussed in today's session. So that kind of judgment is required. One should not go overboard and handle it with care so that you persuade them to change rather than coerce them, and which will not be really successful, and it will not be very helpful. It's not appropriate also.
yeah. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir,
I
please
think I will
go.
stop here, Preeti. I think a lot of people also take medicines from other family members or friends. It has been helpful to my friends, so I am taking. So that is something, because any medicine which you start and then you stop it again, you may have withdrawal symptoms. So without a proper medical advice to start any medicines, because some of these medicines, the some of the pain relieving medicines may have combinations which they will not know. They would take it for pain relief, but it may have combinations of some addictive substances. So that is something then they become habituated to it. So it also leads to a lot of other unwanted side effects. Some of the pain relieving medicines taken can lead to constipation, which can lead to other problems for elderly. So what works for one person or what is prescribed for other person is not something which should be taken simply like that. So a lot of care has to be there, and if prevention can be done in terms of avoiding unnecessary medication, I think that will be the best approach.
Thank you, Dr. Shiv Kumar. I think these are the important things which were addressed partially only and are important. And if anyone has some specific concern about themselves or their family members, please do write to us. Go to our website. We have our email ID. We have our phone. You can call and check with us. We can guide you how to take the professional help as well. Plus, and also whom you know, please ask them to watch this session. It is available in the YouTube, and watch our website and get the earlier information about the other webinars as well. I also would like to tell you that the next webinar is on related to falls, which is quite common in elderly, and we'll talk about what kind of past problems can lead to fall and how to prevent it. Please do watch that as well. And I thank all of you, especially Dr. Arun and Dr. Deepak, to come and give us enlightened talk and discussion about the issues related to, and all the people who participated here and also in our YouTube live session. So with this, I would like to end this webinar on substance use. We'll see that we can take it as a second part and talk about the other things as well. Please do provide the feedback to get the certificate. And once again, thanks to all of you. Have a good evening ahead.
Thank you all. I would like to thank Dr. Arun Kandaswamy, Dr. Deepak, Dr. Preeti, ma'am, and Dr. Shiv Kumar sir for being a part of our Vayo Manas Sanjeevani and our webinar series. It was really an informative and it was really a useful webinar. And I have to specifically say that Dr. Deepak have also said the research, which I mean, whatever the research statistics was there about the patients and about the elderly people. Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this. And Dr. Arun, sir, also, thank you so much. All the attendees, kindly fill your feedback forms to get your participation certificate. I have shared it in the chat box. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Thank you, everybody. And our, like ma'am have said, our next webinar is on falls in elderly. I would like to request all the participants to be a part of this webinar also. Thank you so much. Thank you all.